Hey, what's going on, y'all? I'd like to welcome y'all to the second episode of Talking Comics for Short Fuse. I'm your host on this episode, Sean Mack, the operations director of Short Fuse Media Group. So yeah, we debuted the first episode last week with our publisher Mike Watson. It was an awesome show, and I get the honorable privilege of being able to follow up Mike's episode with episode number 2. So got a lot of stuff to talk about, so I figure let's get into it. Just in case you don't know who I am, my name is Sean Mack, like I said, and I am the operations director of Short Fuse Media Group. What that means is I am the guy that essentially tries to keep everything running smooth. We started off Short Fuse Media Group in about 2014, and we launched with one book called Like Father, Like Daughter. As a publishing company, we started off as a production company where we produced titles for other people, other creators that we weren't releasing as a publishing company at all. And what took place was that, one faithful night, individual that we watched named Comic Uno, Catherine Calamia, she posted a video on her YouTube channel that she was a YouTuber. She used to do like reviews on comics and things like that. And she posted a video where she basically was saying that she wanted to get into making comics. And we were already accustomed to making comics for other people, and we wanted to really test our way to actually moving into making comics on our own. So we sent her a message to say basically, we would be interested in looking at whatever you were pitching for your comic. Well, she sent us the pitch, and lo and behold, the pitch was, something that we thought was new and different, and we decided that we wanted to work with her. So we let her know that we not only wanted to work with her on producing her comic, but we also wanted to have that as our first foray into publishing comics. So Catherine Calamia's first comic, Like Father, Like Daughter, became our first actual title at Short Fuse Media Group as a publisher. And we've been pretty much expanding ever since. We released several issues of that book and decided to bring on other creators after we got a lot of good feedback from creators and positive messages saying that people like what we were doing. And just from there, it just kind of grew. We grew it, and as of right now, we have over 50 issues available in our catalog of different titles and different books that, we take to conventions and we sell online and things like that. And it's just a wonderful experience to be able to help a bunch of different creators and getting their books out and working to release new content all the time. So that's a quick rundown of what Short Fuse Media Group started off as, and where we are today, and pretty much where we at at a point where we just want to continue to make comics and release comics, and just basically just have fun putting out new books. So yeah, as far as what I do at Short Fuse, essentially, up until about 2-3 weeks ago when Michael Watson became the publisher, I was the publisher. I curated the talent and worked. I did all of the signing the artists and worked with all the contracts and things like that, and kept everybody abreast of what was going on, and worked with the teams in order to get books produced and things like that. And what I was doing was realizing that as we expanded and got bigger and added more team members to the fold, that it was too much for me to do on my own. So I created a group called the Joint Chiefs, which were a team of individuals that were editors and chiefs of different divisions that we had at Short Fuse. Like right now, I think we have 8 divisions at Short Fuse. So there's an editor-in-chief over each division of Short Fuse Media Group. And it's just basically a handful of titles that each editor-in-chief has. That way I don't have to deal with, dealing with every creator and every issue that comes up on a case-by-case basis. They have a point of contact that they can go to and actually get those issues addressed and work with those creators prior to it coming to me and me having to make any kind of final decisions. They can work out the kinks, to make a long story short. And that worked out really well. And I realized, bringing on the editors in chiefs, that bringing them on made things a lot easier for me in order to continue to build Short Fuse to what we wanted it to be. When we first started, just like every other indie publisher or indie creator, we had certain people that we went to for certain things, certain houses and production companies that we used to get certain things done. One good example is we had printers that we went to get things done, or we just shop for different rates. Well, once I had the editors in chiefs in place, I could essentially take short fuse and go to have those meetings that I didn't have the time to have before with different printing houses and things like that to try and get us the best pricing and things like that. And it ended up working out really well. So I was able, by having those guys in place and those team members in place, to be able to expand our operation and grow it to a point where things could get done a lot more easier. Because that's pretty much where my background lies is in team building and things like that. Where I work with teams in order to accomplish set goals. And one of our goals is to, again, get the best prices and be able to release product. So having the Joint Chiefs opened my eyes up to the fact that I can get a lot more done if I wasn't the go-to guy for every single thing. If I could have more of a behind-the-scenes role and really focus on getting our operational structure in line, and that's pretty much what I do. Now, of course, I always say I don't work by myself. There's a core team at Short Fuse Media Group, always has been, always will be, which is my art director, is Larry Walker, our financial director, who doesn't like me to say her name, but the people on the team know who she is, and and she's not a creator, just FYI. And then there was me handling operations, but again, I was operations as well as the publisher, as well as the guy that was overseeing the production end of the company and all that other stuff. So again, seeing the Joint Chiefs come aboard, it made me realize that, hey man, I could really work well with actually bringing more people on to do more roles than me focusing on everything all by myself. So again, having a Joint Chiefs come aboard was a really good experience for me, because it really opened my eyes to a lot of the ways that I can make the business grow. Because as we grew our roster with more creators, our revenue grew as well, which is a plus. So, and that wouldn't have been able to happen had it been just me doing everything on my own, because I have to deal with people on a one-on-one and a case-by-case basis. So with that being the case, I saw that the editor-in-chief positions and the creation of the Joint Chiefs was working out well. We brought on 2 members of the Joint Chiefs to help with international IPs and things like that, which actually helps us out in shipping and things like that. So that worked out well. And I just got in the mindset that, hey man, I need to really focus on bringing in more people, as operations. I need to focus on bringing in more people that can help get other things done that, may be a bit of a burden to say, to try and do all on my own. So the original creator that worked with us, Catherine Calamia, the creator of Like Father Like Daughter, she's worked for years as she worked on YouTube. She's worked for CBR. She's worked for a couple different Newsarama. I think maybe it was CBR. I'm not sure, but she's worked for different media outlets, and she really showed an interest in. And I know she went to school for that as well, but she showed an interest in working with, different media outlets and building a better rapport with those media outlets with us and helping us with our titles. So we ended up bringing her on as a PR director at Short Fuse. So, we had a contact person for someone that could actually expedite us in our media engagement, and that worked out well too. So again, that's another title that we brought on, and it seemed to benefit us because we were able to grow from it. So I looked at it and said, you know what, I need to quit playing, and I really just need to get to a point where I just put somebody in a role where I could just let loose and do some other things. We had acquired an action figure company because we wanted to get off into making action figures. We had video games in production, so we were working with White Guardian Studios to produce a video game featuring our characters. And again, I just thought it was a prime opportunity for me to basically bring on another entity that could take on a little bit more of that role and keep the ship going the way it was going, while I stepped into doing other things. And that person ended up being one of the Joint Chiefs, which is Mike Watson, the owner and head of Freestyle Comics. We brought Mike Watson on after issue that he had with a different publisher, and it's just been the greatest thing that could have happened to Short Fuse. I mean, the energy level that Mike brings, the experience level that he has from conventions and things like that, and just the passion that he brings when it comes to creating comics was just something that was just essential for us to continue to grow. And I thought that energy was needed throughout the entire team, because I'm gonna be honest, when it comes to dealing with as many titles and trying to expand the things, it can get a little tiring. I truly love what I'm doing at Short Fuse, and at the end of the day, I wouldn't change it for the world. But there is a breaking point for everybody, and I don't want to get myself to that breaking point to where it's just too much for me to handle. And I'm a team player. I don't have any ego at all when it comes to letting somebody else take the credit for something or doing something. So I worked with Mike for a couple months, and we had a lot of dialogue around bringing him aboard, and it ended up working out. And Michael came aboard as the publisher, and he's been making some changes and things, and it's all beneficial for the company, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing, and I think he's enjoying it, I'm enjoying it, and the team is enjoying it. And it's a refreshing take on what we had already going on, and plus it lets people know that these are positions. They're not guaranteed to be there or to stay, and that anybody can grow into these positions. And that's important to me, because I want everybody to know that, if you do the work and you're willing to show that you are interested in doing some of those things, and you can take over them roles too. So bringing Mike Watson on was like the pinnacle of the spot, because it even launched shows like this, because this was one of Mike's ideas. One of Mike's grand ideas was to do talk shows and things like that, where we talked about making comics and what we do. And I think it's a great idea, and that's why I'm happy to be here on episode 2 again as your host, Sean Mack, operations director at Short Fuse Media Group. So that's pretty much a quick, brief history lesson on Short Fuse and what Short Fuse is all about. And we're having fun making comics. We're doing a lot of conventions. We're doing Kickstarters, and we're just. I can get into a lot of details about things that we do, but I don't want to bore you guys. You guys see what we do already. But what I will say is that we will be doing more. We will be doing a lot more coming soon. And there's a lot of interesting things that we're working on. And again, since I can focus more on behind the scenes things and structure things, I'm having fun coming up with new ideas as well. So today's topic that I wanted to really touch on, beyond giving a brief history lesson, because when we talk about comics, we want to make it something beneficial where everybody can take something away from it. Today's topic for me, I wanted to talk about was the difference between profit and revenue, because I see a lot of chatter and I see a lot of discussion about profits in indie comics, and I see a lot of people talk about the profits that they make, and and I think sometimes it kind of takes me back a little bit, because I think that a lot of people don't understand the difference between profit and revenue, which is totally fine, but it's a difference. There is a difference. I see a lot of guys, sometimes I used to see guys say things like, oh, they were so proud of the fact that they were self-funding. They used to say that a lot. They self-funding their own projects and things like that. And then they talk about the sales that they made, from those projects. And my thought process was, well, just based off of the numbers that they're giving, I see that you're taking a loss. And for me, I've never patterned Short Fuse as a company where we took losses. To me, that doesn't seem to be ideal for business. To want to take a loss or to be proud of the fact that you took a loss, because there is no such thing as a business that is created in order to generate losses. It doesn't exist. So while I'm not going to say we're rolling in dough, and Michael Watson made it a point to point out in a recent video that he made that we're a multi-$1,000 company, I will say that we have pretty much mastered the art of ensuring that we don't take losses. There's, I've said it a couple times on a couple live videos that I've done, that there isn't a single creator at Short Fuse that has came into Short Fuse in the red and stayed there. If anything, we get them into the black. Red being there at a loss, black being at they're breaking even, and green being at they're in a profit. And the reason that takes place is because I understand the difference between revenue and profit. I understand the difference between, well, I understand the importance of teaching our creators the difference between revenue and profit, and working with our creators to make sure that whatever projects that they're working on are leading into a profit realm as opposed to just a revenue realm of breaking even or even taking a loss. So I want to break down real quick the difference between profit and revenue, so it can be set to rest and people can understand what it is we're talking about. So every time you make a sale on something, whether you have a product, and we're going to keep it about comics. So every time you have a comic, so you have your comic, you have your retail price for your comic, you sell your comic at a convention, you sell your comic on Kickstarter, whatever you do. However you sell your comic online, you sell it to somebody hand to hand for whatever. Every time you sell that comic, that's revenue. You're making revenue. So if you're selling your comic for $3, $5, $10, $20, whatever, that's how much revenue you made. You made $5, $10, $20 in revenue. That's the overall thing of what revenue is. You make a sale, somebody gives you money, that's revenue. Period. That's what your revenue is. What happens though is that you have to be able to understand what your profit is. A lot of people think that every time they make a sale that's profit. That's not profit. When you make a sale, you are making revenue. The only way to determine profit is by taking out the cost associated with the product that you had and then having what's left over. So when you take the cost out from the revenue, what's left over is the profit. Okay? So if you let's say you made a comic and you were making a comic and your comic cost you, let's just use round numbers. We're going to use round numbers, and let's just say your comic was $100 for you to make. Now your comic shouldn't be $100, but let's just say your comic was $100 for you to make. So if you took a comic and you made a comic and you spent $100 on making that comic, okay, and then let's say you spent another $100 on printing your comic. So now you spent $200. You spent $200. You spent $100 to make your comic. You spent $100 to print your comic. And let's say you when you printed that comic, you had 100 copies. So let's say there's $1 a copy. These numbers are totally wrong, but I'm just using round numbers. Okay. So what happens is now every time you sell your comic, right? Once you sell your comic, you're going to be making revenue. But here's the problem that a lot of people fail to factor in, or they don't acknowledge it, at least publicly. They don't acknowledge it. Every sale that you make, you're still at a loss because you were at a loss from the time that you made your comic. So if you spent $200 making that comic, or $100 making a comic and $100 printed, until you make back that $200, you're still at a loss. You've taken a loss, period. So if you're selling your comic at, let's say, $2, and you again, you got 100 copies. Well, once you sell all those comics, if you sell all of those comics at $2, again, your cost on production was $100 and your printing cost was $100, and now you're selling the books for $2. If that's what you decide to do, if you're selling your books at $2, but you only got 100 copies, then guess what? You're going to just break even. There's no way for you to ever make a profit. So what's happened is that, yeah, you may have sold 100 copies. Yay! You sold 100 copies of your comic. You sold it at $2. But again, if you sold it at $2, then the maximum amount that you're going to make is $200. Well, what was your cost? Your cost was $200. And we didn't even get into shipping or anything like that, or, we're just using round numbers. So that's a break even. That's a break even right there. That means that you broke even at $200 and that you are in the black. You're not in the green. You haven't made a profit yet. You're in the green. I mean, you're in the black. You're at break even. You've made your money back that you spent, but you had to allocate those funds in order to get the product. So that's, in a nutshell, and I hope that made sense, that shows some of the dynamic. Now, of course, you can, adjust things to make sure that you make profit. So, same scenario. Instead of selling your comics for $2, you sell your comics for $3. So, it's $100 to produce your comic. It's $100 to print it. They gave you 100 copies. Okay, now you got to sell it. You're selling it. Instead of selling it for $2, you sell it for $3. Now, if you sell those 100 copies, okay, now you sold and made, $300 because you sold those 100 copies at $3 a piece. So your profit on that now has become $100. You're not in the red, you're in the green now. Now you're in profit. You see where I'm going? You got to balance it out. So again, same boat. You sell your comics at $5, like we do. You sell your comics at $5. Okay, now you've made $500 off of the $200 investment. So your profit is $300. You get what I'm saying? So these are things you have to look at to understand the difference. What you made, $500, if you sell them at $5, is $500 in revenue. Your profit is now $300, and $300 is what your profit is. So these are numbers that sometimes I think creators are either too scared to look at or just refuse to look at, which leads to them not being able to run their business the way that they should be able to. Because you have to factor in what those numbers are. You can't run your business without at least paying attention to what those numbers are, because those numbers are important. So you have to know that, hey, this is how much profit I made versus this is how much revenue I made. Because again, if you know how much profit you made, you know what you can put in your pockets, you know what you can, use to put in different projects and things like that, to reinvest, whatever is the case. But if you don't do that, then you're just hemorrhaging funds. You're hemorrhaging funds without being aware of whatever dollar amount that you've spent or whatever you've made or things like that. And that's just not good, to make a long story short. So, again, that's the gist of it. And I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, maybe I'll come in and do another video, but I mean, it's kind of simple. It's kind of simple. Your revenue is, just taking away. I mean, if you want to figure out what your profit is, you take the revenue that you made and subtract your cost. You subtract the cost. Once you subtract the cost, what's left over is your profit. So revenue minus cost equal profit. Simple. But you gotta be able to factor everything in as your cost. You can't just factor in what you want to. You can't just pick and choose. You got to take the whole project, everything encompassing around that project. You have to take that in. I mean, it's the same way if you did a convention. If you did a convention and the booth rent was $75, or let's stick to round numbers. Let's say the booth rent was $100. Okay, so now you're selling books at, $3, $5, a book. Well, you have to factor that in. So now, and what makes it even worse is if you're talking about conventions and things like that, and you haven't made back your production cost already, or you printed books for that convention, you got to factor that in. That's all cost. So before you can say, hey, I did a convention and we made, X amount of dollars and we made all this profit, well, you got to look at all of the money that was put into it, including your gas money if you had to drive to the convention, flights if you had to take a flight to the convention, hotel rooms if you had to do room and board, all those things you got to factor in. So again, when you guys are talking about your profit and your revenue, just be honest with yourself, because the more you're honest with yourself, you can understand what you need to work on and what you need to change. So that'll be my spiel and the information that I can give this week around talking about comics and things that I think people should focus on, which is again profit and revenue. So yeah, hopefully that made sense, and hopefully that helped somebody in understanding things a little bit better. Not saying anybody doesn't, but I've seen some chatter, and I know that sometimes there've been a little bit of confusion. So at any rate, back to talking about short fuse and talking about what I do with comics and things like that. On this show, what we typically do every week is we have a chance to do some live Q&As. And if you're watching this video, I probably should have said at the beginning, but full disclaimer, we had to pre-record this video. I recently took a position to help somebody with, focusing on, I guess, building something else. Because again, I've got all this free time now. So, it kind of made it so I couldn't do the show at 8 p.m. like Mike wanted the show. But I talked to Mike. I got approval from the boss. So we're good. And he said I could pre-record my show. And just a heads up, there will be other shows that we'll be doing pre-recorded because, again, with doing things like expanding off into programming and things like that, which, by the way, we did just bring on a new program director because, again, I bring on a position, so we'll be making that announcement soon. But having a way to get more content to you guys, that's content that you guys want to see, and expand it out, we want to be able to stick to being consistent on the times that we deliver them that content. And if Mike chose that, we're going to deliver this content to you guys weekly at 8 p.m. on Mondays, that's Eastern time, then, that's what we want to do. So if I have to pre-record a video and get the video up there, then that's what we'll do. But beyond that, there will be other pre-recorded videos that I'll be doing. I know Mike is going to do a couple because we want to start really focusing on the programming that we do and the things that we talk about publicly. So, expect to see more videos. And as we bring the program director on, we'll make those announcements, and we'll be able to talk about what kind of programming we're doing and why we have so much focus on, programming right now. So again, full disclaimer, this was the first episode that was the pre-recorded. So this is kind of like the pilot of the pre-recorded episodes. So one of the things on the show that we do every week, though, is that we have a question and answer section. So, and I didn't want to omit doing questions and answering questions for people because I felt like, hey, there are some people that I get in my messages and all the time that have questions that they want answered and they want to get some of my advice on, which, again, I'm not a guru or anything, but I can speak from the experiences that we had. So what I did is I posted a question on social media and just let people know that, hey, I wouldn't be able to do the live Q&A, but if anybody had questions, that they could just send them to me and, I'll answer them on the show. And which, thankfully, I got a ton of questions. So if you guys aren't part of it, make sure you join Team Short Fuse All Access. And I'm going to give a shout out to everybody from Team Short Fuse All Access. That is a group that we have on Facebook where and they jumped in and they gave me a ton of questions, so I didn't feel like, man, my show couldn't experience the aspect of answering questions. So, shouts out to everybody from Team Short Fuse. Really appreciate that. And if you don't know, with Team Short Fuse, we do contests every week. So if you're not in Team Short Fuse, you're missing out on the opportunity to get contests, to participate in contests and get free merchandise from us. And the participation is simple. It's nothing you got to buy or anything like that. And, we'll be making the announcements for the first winner of the first contest that we had this week. Where somebody got to win a Hot Shot t-shirt. And so, the contest is posted in the group, and the only way you can see it is if you're a member of the group. So if you're not part of Team Short Fuse All Access, make sure you find us on social media, on Facebook, and jump into the group and join into the contest and things like that. So let's see. Again, I got a bunch of questions, and I figured that I'll answer them here, so I didn't have to omit them. So let's see. The first question came from Andrew Duggan, and he wrote, what is your favorite comic from your library at Short Fuse? And also, what would you recommend for a person who likes characters like Deadpool? So both questions that he asked kind of go hand in hand. One of my favorite comics out of our library, and it's technically I'm gonna leave with this. My favorite comic would have to be Grit versus Unstoppable. Grit versus Unstoppable is a one-shot that we did, but it's part of a continuing storyline for a character named Grit. So the answer for who would you recommend, what title would you recommend for a person that like characters like Deadpool will be Grit, because Grit is a complete butthole. He's a amazing hero, and he's just finding his way, and him finding his way, he gets to go through a lot of different things. So Grit is a character that's close to my heart, and the Grit versus Unstoppable one shot was just hilarious. It was written, the plot was written by me, dialogue, and it was fleshed out by Martin Dunn, who's an awesome writer. The artwork by DC Stulpner was 100% phenomenal. And yeah, it was just a really fun book, and I tell everybody that read it, I guarantee you at least laugh out loud once. You will at least laugh out loud once. So that for me would be the title that I would recommend to people. But I typically recommend, when I talk to people, I talk to them about, what kind of books they like. That's what I would recommend, but that might not be the flavor that you're into, and shouts out to Hubert Michael Kahn or Hubert Kahn Michael, I can't remember who's also the creator of Unstoppable, because his character was featured in Grit versus Unstoppable. So that'll be that. But that'll be the first question. Appreciate your question, Andrew. Let's see. When this question, yeah. So the next question came from Tyrell White, who's again we're partnering with White Gardening Studios. He wrote, "What credentials are you looking for when adding a new book to your roster to publish?" I've answered that question a couple times before. For us, it's really a matter of the rapport. It's a matter of the rapport that we have with the creator. It's also a matter of how much work, or how much work that the creator is doing. If we see that the creator is consistently pushing their title and pushing their brand, that might be something we want to be in business with, or someone we want to be in business with. If the creator is not, and they just expect us to do all of the work for them, then we're not going to be interested. Not going to be interested at all. So as far as credentials, it'll really just boil down to work ethic, and how much rapport that the creator actually has with us. One of the final things that I typically look for, and things may be adjusted a little bit as Mike gets more situated in as the publisher, but one of the things that I particularly look at is I try and look to see if there is a potential that the characters in the IP that the creator is pitching will fit in with what we're doing with the rest of our teams. We obviously want to look for potential crossover opportunities and ways to cross promote and things like that. If you got a character that doesn't fit in with anything else that we're doing, then we're going to limit that. So I would rather not limit that, and I would rather just try and figure out ways to bring on creators that fit in with what we're doing. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to take a look at things that don't fit in what we're doing. And I know there is some expansion dialogue going on now, but as of right now, that's pretty much what we look at. The rapport, the work ethic of the creator, and, is there a chance that the characters that the creator is bringing on, will they fit in with the rest of our characters? So that's pretty much the guidelines of what I look at. That's my 3-point triangle offense right there. Let's see. Next question again came from Tyrell. He wrote, "You are making a new toy line. Aside from creators buying into it, how was your selection process with your current wave of characters?" With the current wave of characters, we actually piggybacked the choosing of the characters that were in the first wave with other things that we had going on, because again, we want to look at cross promotional opportunities. So without getting into too much detail, I will say that the characters that were selected as our first wave will potentially be showing up in other things, which will feed into the action figure line. So, that's pretty much where it boils down to. We looked at what we had upcoming for other opportunities, and we looked at ways to cross promote those opportunities, and that's kind of how we picked out the characters that would be involved. Let's see, we got another question that said, "Books to have 4 more issues on your website, is there a chance of doing a bundle similar to what you do at conventions?" So what they're talking about is at conventions we usually sell, sometimes we do package deals at conventions, but we don't do that on our website. And I'll say that for the most part, we've really got away from doing a lot of those package deals. We do the package deals that we do, we make sure that they have value for the customers. But it's not just discounted package deals. So, essentially, if somebody wants to get the full pack, if it's a matter of us throwing prints in or things like that, or maybe looking at maybe a variant cover option, that may be something we'll look at. But as far as is a bundle with like a potential discount or anything, we don't really do that anymore. We used to do that a lot. But yeah, it's just not something that we need to do anymore. And for whatever reason, we've got to the point where we don't have to do that anymore, and I'd rather not. So let's see another question that we got. Let's see. Alfred Page wrote, "Any update on when we'll see Dan Sin's title Sumo Boy?" And if you guys don't know, Dan Sin is the publisher of Argo Comics. He brought a title to Short Fuse called Sumo Boy. all ages title. It's an awesome looking title. The thing that I would say about that is it's really up to Dan. Dan has to submit the project as completed, and I believe Dan is waiting until he get a couple books under his belt, which makes sense to me. So it's not really a matter of us holding Dan up or anything like that. It's just, I think Dan is just working on his project and getting it tight. So when Dan is ready, we'll get it on the board and we'll go from there. Let's see. Next question came again from Tyrell, who wrote, "Are you still looking for characters for alignment? If yes, what is the process?" Alignment is coming, and there will be an opportunity for more characters to join. With starting the division of alignment, we decided to take a step back and really focus on what we wanted to do, because we had some ideas on what we wanted to do, but then we decided to go a different route with them, especially after releasing multiple titles from the alignment roster. So alignment is coming. I'll say that much. Alignment is coming. Me and Michael will be having some more dialogue about that fairly soon. And then once we have that dialogue and we sort things out, we'll make more public announcements on that one. So let's see. The next question. And you know what? Some of these questions I am going to skip, but this is what I'm going to do. I am going to skip them with the sole intent of doing another video, because it was a lot of questions, and I'll potentially have more questions that I'll add in later and just do a separate video with just answering questions. So just a heads up if I don't get to your question. Let's see. The next one came from Andy Shaggy Cordy. He wrote, "What previously established companies do you try to emulate?" That's a good question. To be honest, I don't think we try and emulate any company. Not saying that there isn't companies to emulate. I just think that we have our own path and we have a different thing that we're trying to do. As I started to work in the indie comics, and as we expanded past Like Father, Like Daughter, and doing more and bringing more creators on, a common theme that I heard was that creators need to get together and be the next image. They need to be the next image, and we can build the next image, the indie creators. And I always thought that didn't make any sense, because the big factor that made Image what they were was the fact that those guys were rock stars already. I mean, they were indie. They were rock stars from mainstream comics that went into the indie realm. These are rock stars, a group of them at that. The top level talent at Marvel and DC at the time. So, saying that you're going to start the next Image, well, unless you Robert Kirkman, I don't see that happening, because Robert Kirkman is one of the guys that's getting the highest amount of sales right now. So unless you Robert Kirkman and, him joining with a bunch of other guys that's making a lot of money making comics right now or selling units right now, I just don't see that happening. And I never did. So with Short Fuse, what I wanted to do was always have a place where we could pattern and cross promote our characters with each other, which is why one of the things that I look at is the ability for the characters to intermingle with each other. So that was one of the things that we looked at and that I looked at. It wasn't necessarily being an Image. Yeah, I wanted it to be a house where we could have different imprints. To be honest, I actually pattern what we do at Short Fuse more based off of music industry things. Like I was actually talking to Lonzo Starr the other day, and I told him specifically, I was like, this is kind of like Island Def Jam. If anybody ever knows anything about music industry, Def Jam Recordings, they had a branch called Island Def Jam, and that housed many different rosters of imprints, and that's pretty much what Short Fuse are. It's just a bunch of imprints together under one banner. We all working on the same, with the same goals. But again, knowing what the goal is what's important. And the goal may be just getting the comics to each other's fan bases, and that's one of the hallmarks of what Short Fuse is about, is seeing if we can intermingle fan bases in order to grow the reach of one title and another title and then another title. So let's see. Andy had another question. Is there anything you wish you could do differently? Specifically, I wish I would have focused sooner on our mailing list implementation. In our operation with mailing lists. I think that's something I would have did different, and I'm trying to rectify that now. But I think that's a boat that we kind of missed out on that we have to play catch up on. and I don't like playing catch up. Then the next question was, do you ever feel like your books are not given a fair chance? And actually, no, the next question was, if a woodchuck could chuck wood, how far do you think she or he could chuck it? I would say they would chuck the wood about the length of 3 pieces of wood that they chucked. And I'm answering that because you told me not to miss that, and you told me to make sure I answer that question, so I answered that question. So the next thing that he wrote was, do you ever feel like your books are not given a fair chance because it's not DC or Marvel? And to be honest, no, I don't. I don't think we're not given a fair chance. I think that the reality of it is we have to get our books to the point where people see them. You know, once we get our books to the point where people see them and people are aware of them, then they'll be able to get the same chance any other books get. And that's the difference between Marvel and DC. They put their books in a position where people can see their books, you know, and they've had 75 years worth of time to do it. We haven't had that. And, you know, in 75 years, I think we'll be on the same playing field. It's no big deal. Let's see. The next question was, will new promotion posters be made to include the newer characters on the roster? No. I don't believe in promotional posters because there's no value in it, and we kind of just talked about it. You know, profit and revenue. There is no profit in promotional posters. There is no profit in, you know, it's just an expense. So for me, there is no intent on that. You know, if the creators of Short Fuse want to get together and do that, they can do that. But our focus is not a promotional poster. Our focus is putting out more books. You know, if anything, I would talk about a promotional book that featured everybody, but I wouldn't talk about a, you know, promotional poster that featured anybody, because that's, to me, is no point. I don't need to promote using a poster. Plus, posters aren't the greatest promotional tool anyway. It's just my thoughts. So let's see. Next question came from Dave Brink. What do you think about word balloons on comic book covers like they had occasionally in the Silver Age? Would that look goofy today? Nah, I don't think it'll look goofy. We had a title that we co-produced, or that we produced for a creator, and it was called it was Night Wasp, and I think his issue number 1 and issue number 2 both had word balloons on them. I thought they looked great. I didn't see anything wrong with it at all. I just think it's a matter of if it works, you know, for that title. If it works for that title, do it. If it doesn't, don't. Let's see. Next question was, since comics are our main product, was something like the Artist Short Fuse illustration or concept book be out of the question? Not at all. But again, that's a matter of whether the creators of that book or those books want to do that. And we just have to find an audience for it. If we find an audience for it, I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, anything's possible. I wouldn't have a problem with selling it. I wouldn't have a problem with it if there was an audience for it. So, you know, it's just something we can talk about, and if it works, it works. So, with that being the case, we heading up on 45 minutes. The episode's supposed to be minimum of 30 minutes, and I want to cut this episode short since I'm pre-recorded. Plus, I got a lot of things that I still got to do, as we talked about. So I'm going to end this. I'm going to thank everybody for reaching out with questions. Remember, if you part of Team Short Fuse, we'll be having more contests, and will announce the next contest soon, because again, the contests are weekly, so today's Monday. I need to announce the new contest, so we'll be announcing the new contest. If you're not part of Team Short Fuse, make sure you go join up Team Short Fuse All Access. Check us out on our website at shortfusemediagroup.com. Make sure you like the Facebook page, Short Fuse Media Group, and yeah, I really appreciate anybody that's tuning in and checking this out, and hopefully see you guys soon.